everyone, welcome back to a new episode of Little Shop of Nerds. I'm Julia.
Mike?
And before we start, I want to apologize for the coughing that happened last week. I was quite sick, but I'm feeling a lot better now, so that's great. So last week's hint was, what if I fall off a roof?
And that means we're going to be talking about the Santa Claus. The Tim Allen one from the 90s. We're not just going to talk about the first one. We're going to talk about the second, third, and the Disney Plus show. Now, bear with us. We're going to try to get this through the fastest we can. I know it'll take a little long, but we're going to get through it as fast as I can.
Yeah. There's only 2 seasons to the Tim Allen, or to the Santa Claus TV show. Whether they do any more for next year, we don't know.
We'll find out.
Yeah, I guess we will. So, we're just going up to the second season, and then after that, we'll pretty much be done.
Yep, and you can watch it all on Disney Plus.
Yep, it's all right there.
Not a sponsor.
Yeah. Okay, so if you are unfamiliar, see, Santa Claus is one of my favorite Christmas movies.
I'll watch it. I'll watch it every year. So
I do too. It's great. And it was filmed in 1994, which makes me feel very, very old.
I agree. It does make you feel old, and yet, just looking at it from the 90s, it's like you missed the era.
Yeah, and it's really weird because the CGI is definitely leaves something to be desired.
But here's the thing, it was still freshly new back in the 90s.
I mean, it was good for the 90s, but now that we're just so used to CGI being more lifelike or whatever, it's just kind of
Yeah, but then again, you kind of wonder, you just get sick and tired of the CGI sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really depends on this point of view.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with the Santa Claus, and if you are, where have you been?
I know, right?
It's about this divorced father.
Played by Tim Allen.
Yeah, and he is at a party. He works for a toy company, and then he
goes home, spend time with his
son. It's Christmas Eve.
And that's just pretty much the joint custody thing, They go, he gets into a fight with his ex because Neil is Scott's ex-wife's
husband,
and he's a psychiatrist. And pretty much, psychiatrist jokes, or say he's not a real doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just how it is. But yeah, they just argued about how Charlie came home crying, saying there was no such, because of a school bully told him there's no such thing as Santa Claus. And he didn't like it because, if you're going to try to destroy our kids' hope and fantasy, I want to be there.
Yeah. So they have a little argument, and Charlie's like, "Can we not fight?" And he's like, "Oh, we're not fighting." Anyways, so Tim Allen tries to cook dinner.
Burns it,
so they end up having to go to Denny's.
Now, you show me a TikTok video of that scene, and you show me that there was they closed up on a kid and had pointy ears.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an elf.
Yeah, we'll get to that because that's actually sprinkled throughout this movie.
Oh,
Let's save that until the end.
Yes, let's wait.
And then when we get to the series, we'll talk about it some more because it actually we'll explain it a little bit better. So they go to Denny's. They have dinner.
And they go home. He reads him a bedtime story.
It's
twice the night before Christmas.
It was the night before Christmas.
And Charlie keeps asking his dad about Santa, and he says, "Look, people who believe in Santa, they just believe in it." Mm-hmm. And after a while, they're asleep. Charlie hears a knocking on the roof. Goes to his dad. He goes outside and nothing but a jacket and a pair of boxer shorts. I'm like, oh yeah.
Boots. Don't forget his boots.
His boots. I'm like, I'm surprised his legs ain't cold, but
Yeah, I know.
But besides that, he just shouts, "Hey you!" And it was a Santa Claus. It was Santa Claus, and he fell off the roof.
Yep.
And Charlie came out, saw it, and a ladder appeared, and they go look, trying to find Santa, and he disappeared. So they took the coat. But here's the thing: before they took the coat, he finds looks like a
business card
saying, "Put on the suit, and the reindeers will tell you what to do." So they'll get to that, right? But they go up, they fly around on the reindeer, they go to a first house. They told him to deliver Charlie asked him to deliver the toys, and what he does before he goes down, he puts on the Santa Claus suit. They didn't want to, but his son guilted him to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
then that's when they go around and deliver all the toys
around the world, and they go back to the North Pole.
Well, before that, there was this little girl named Sarah.
Yes.
And she was sleeping on the couch waiting for Santa, and he arrived, or, Tim Allen, Santa arrives, Scott Calvin.
Yes, Scott Calvin.
He arrives, and he's like, hey, she's like, Santa? And he was like...
Scott Calvin.
Yeah, and so he was very rude to the little girl, and she's like, why aren't you fat? And he said something about, like, he was watching his weight or something like that. It's just being very rude.
Well, what do you expect? He was kind of roped into it, and you can't blame him, but then again, after a while, he starts to... I wouldn't say get into it, he was just doing it just to help his son.
Well, I mean, still talking about that scene, though, like, she's like, well, what about the milk and cookies? He's like, I'm lactose intolerant. It's like, I can't drink milk. He's like, oh, just go back to sleep. He's like, you want this doll? Go back to sleep. Being a dick, basically.
Well...
And so then they go back to the North Pole.
And they meet the elves, everything. There's a head elf named Bernard, and he's trying to figure out where they are. And even he asked one of the elves, he's like, hey kid, where? He's like, kid, I have 20 shoes older than you.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, the elves are played by kids, actually. Mm-hmm. By actual kids. They got kids that wear the pointy ears, the clothes. I'm like, in the 90s, and when you're like their age, you didn't see a problem with that. But when you get older, I'm like,
I mean, they did the same thing though with the other movies. They got kids to play it.
I know, it's like that's when you're a kid. Like when I saw the first two, I was still a kid. But when I'm an adult, when you watch the show, I'm like.
I mean, I still don't really see a problem with it.
Well, good point too, but still, Scott doesn't believe it because he's actually there. But Judy, who's
she's she takes care of him,
kind of like a caretaker, brings him cocoa and shit.
Yeah, kind of like I don't want to say servant, but
more like a.
I guess we could say caretaker.
Well, I would say caretaker mostly.
She takes care of Santa, basically.
And Bernard is the head elf, so...
He rules all over all the elves.
Well, he's the number one elf, technically, but yes.
He rules all over the elves.
Okay, think of this. Santa's the CEO, Bernard's a manager, pretty much.
I mean, he rules all over the elves.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's...
Basically what I'm saying, he supervises the elves.
Yeah, but a lot of people at home don't know that, so...
Head elf kind of insinuates the fact that he is,
Okay, let's just put it in a business perspective. But yeah, before all, he's asking Bernard, he says, do you have the card? And the card is a contract, very much. Mm-hmm. But you can't read it because it's in small print, like fucking corporate does.
Yeah, it's all around the edges. It just looks like a line, a solid line, like a border around the outside of the card.
And they pretty much say, he told him, you put on the suit, you're the big guy. And he's just telling you, you're going to go back home, be in the normal world for half a year.
You get your affairs in order and you're due back here at Thanksgiving.
And, and here's the thing, Scott's still having doubts about. He goes back. He still doesn't believe he was there, but Charlie knows they were there.
Mm-hmm.
And Charlie is so excited that his dad can be Santa Claus, but he's doesn't want, because like the mom, Neil, doesn't think it's healthy for the kid, which I can understand, but then shenanigans ensues.
Yeah. So Scott Calvin starts to gain weight.
Like crazy.
Starts to grow beard.
Like crazy.
His hair starts to turn white. And basically he's just starting to turn into Santa.
And he's starting to note the kids' names and knowing who's naughty or nice, and pretty much people think he's doing this just to keep Charlie happy, but they were going to take his parental rights away and other stuff, and Charlie gave him the snow globe that Bernard gave him, and the snow globe is magical, and when Scott looked into it, he started to remember, and he realized he is Santa Claus now. He doesn't mind.
Yeah, so he does end up getting into the role more as Santa. Him and Charlie take off together.
And
then he gets arrested.
Yes, because they thought he kidnapped him. Though he said it wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, but it's considered parental kidnapping.
Well, either way, it's true. They go back, they make some new gear for him, so they protect him. Even he gets like a rope, and he keeps saying, "What happens if I fall off a roof?" And his reindeer comic gave him a rope for Christmas, saying, "It's like you did the card." He's like, does the little grunt. He's like, "Nice rope. Is this for if I fall off the roof?"
Yeah. So, anyways, that's where our hint came in.
Yes. And they go to deliver the presents. He goes to Neil and his wife's house. They arrested him, and they bring in the ELFs. They're kind of like a fucking elf police.
Yeah, and they break him out of jail, and he was able to finish. But that's when he gave he went back to his ex-wife's house, and then she realized that he was Santa.
And Neil.
But Neil was still like, this is crazy. Like, you're all delusional. He's like, he's trying to pull us into this fantasy world that he has.
And here's the thing: Bernard comes. Charlie didn't want him to go because he had to go back and deliver. And he says, "No, hey, you and your mom and Neil, they're family. We're all a family now. Even though I don't agree with Neil, he gets the point. He didn't want his dad to go because he know he'll never see him a lot anymore." And Bernard comes to the house again, and he says, "You know that snow globe I gave you?" He's like, "Yeah. If you shake it, your dad will come. It's kind of like he wants to see him. He'll come to you day or night. So in one way, he's not limiting just for once a year. So Scott goes up the roof. The police are there, and
yeah, he manages to get away. He gives Neil a gift that Neil never got as a child, which is probably when he stopped believing in Santa. And he was like, "Santa?" He's like, "Oh my gosh, it really is Santa." So then they actually believed that he was Santa. So then basically that's the end of the first movie.
And the second one is the second one is about where he has to get a wife.
Mm-hmm. So it's really funny because he has a very, very close relationship with his ex-wife and Neil. And their daughter, that Neil and
Lucy.
Yeah, her name's Lucy. It's the daughter, the half sister of Charlie. She calls him Uncle Scott. And so basically in this one he has to get married.
And if he doesn't, he can't be Santa Claus no more. And here's what they did for the second one.
He had like a month.
Yeah. Month. And here's what they did. They also got some extra characters. You heard the term Mother Nature, Cupid, and Father Time, and the Easter Bunny. They put them in the movie.
Yeah, they're the legendary creatures.
Well, legendary figures, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
They even had Sandman, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. That's cool. And if Scott doesn't get a wife, he can't be Santa Claus. And the figures realize he can't. He needs to be Santa Claus because they know kids are more happier with it. He gives them a chance, kind of like he was doing. So he goes back to the real world, deal with Charlie. But here's the thing: he couldn't leave the North Pole because he had to do the toys. So Curtis, the second elf, and here's the thing: Curtis. There's also Bernard from the first movie on there. And I have to say, in the first movie, he didn't like. In the first movie, he's young. In the second movie, it looked like he did not age at all.
Yeah, and I mean this movie came out in the early 2000s. So with Bernard looking, young in 1994, and then you see him again,
he didn't age at much.
It looked like he did not age at all, which was really creepy because it's like he probably should look a little bit older.
But we'll explain.
But I mean, but makeup can change it. Can make anybody look younger.
Yeah, but we'll explain that when we get to the show. Mm-hmm. But like I said, they cloned him. They cloned Santa, but the clone is a doll, pretty much, a toy, and he was there to replace him, to keep an eye on shit so the elves don't get freaked out.
Yeah.
So they're doing everything, but here's the thing: that toy Santa becomes a dictator because he reads the handbook and he thinks everyone's naughty.
Yeah. So anyway, so while crazy Santa, doll Santa, is taking over the North Pole, Scott Calvin is dating Charlie's principal. Because he's been getting himself into trouble because he wants to be able to tell that his dad is Santa, but he can't tell anybody that his dad is Santa.
And also, why he's always graffitiing everything or tagging.
Mm-hmm.
Why he's tagging?
It was to get attention from his dad, right?
I think attention, but also Principal Newman didn't want to put Christmas decorations up in the school and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of like a hard-headed woman, pretty much.
Hard ass.
I wanted to say either, but I never thought.
Yeah.
But besides that, and you can tell, in the beginning, that Scott and her did not. Her name is Principal Newman, by the way.
Her real name is Carolyn, I think.
Carol.
Yeah.
But something like that. She, they don't see an eye to eye at first, and they start to like each other after a party or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess they are doing community service. You get the point. But here's the thing. I know you're going to be like, well, he's Santa. And I was like, well, here's the thing. There's a thing called desantification. Meaning, he goes back to normal. Mm-hmm. So he'll look normal before he became Santa Claus.
Yeah. So anyways, he does end up telling her that he's Santa.
But she think he was being crazy and trying to dump her. But in my opinion, if you're thinking that's the way to dump someone, in my opinion, something's wrong with you.
Yeah. So she also shared something very vulnerable with him too, and she thought that he was using that against her.
And he's not. He wasn't. So, and he realized he can't be. He gives up because he knows he can't be Santa anymore. And Curtis came to the real world. They tell that the toy Santa's gone crazy. So what they did is, they were going to use the jetpack, but it broke. But Scott didn't have any magic to get him back to the North Pole. But they realized he brought his reindeer Comet, but Comet ate too much candy.
Yeah, because Lucy was feeding him too much candy.
He became a fat ass.
And Lucy also figured out that Scott was Santa.
Yeah, and here's the thing, after they realized if they take a look, get a tooth, they can get Tooth Fairy to help fly him back.
Mm-hmm.
So they tried to get Scott's teeth out, couldn't, so they used Lucy. Lucy lost a tooth, so, you know.
They use Lucy's tooth to get back to the North Pole. So they get to the North Pole, they defeat Crazy Doll Santa. They get Carol and Scott get married right before midnight, and he was able to stay Santa.
Yes.
And then they had a baby.
Yes, well, that's the third film, but like I said,
third?
Yeah, but like I said, she started to believe he was Santa when Charlie showed her the snow globe and showed the magic inside of it. And, you know, after that, they get married, they go back to Charlie's, he drops off Charlie, tells Lucy, hey, I am Santa, and you were right. And Charlie tells him, you can't tell no one either. He's like, yeah, but he said, don't look at it as a burden, look at it as a gift.
Yeah, but I think it might have. No, I could have sworn that it was the second one where they introduced Buddy.
Yeah, that's the third one, though.
Because they were asking Mrs. Claus how she got together with Santa or whatever.
That's the third.
And then he came in at the end. With the baby.
That's the third. That's the third.
Is that the third film?
Third film, yes.
Oh no.
But, okay, the third film.
Because she was pregnant in the third one.
Yes.
Yeah.
The third film, pretty much like she said at the beginning, Carol becomes like a teacher to the new elves, and they want to know about the story about her little baby, and she tells the story, and you know she's being overwhelmed because she's in a place that she can't be with her family during the holidays.
Especially with her being pregnant.
And, you know, Scott feels the same way, but he's also being pressured because he's being Santa, trying to be a good husband, but also
trying to keep it a secret from her parents.
But also realize he's going to be a dad again because he doesn't want to screw up again.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a meeting with the legendary figures. They bring Jack Frost in, played by Martin Short.
Yeah.
And he wants to be Santa. And they were going to try to, counsel him out? You know, take whatever they were going to do.
Yeah, he figured out, Jack Frost figured out how to become Santa.
Because Curtis told what the escape clause was.
Yeah, so what they did was, Scott went and got her parents, Carol's parents.
And they're pretending that they're in Canada.
Yeah, and he also brings Neil,
his ex-wife,
I can't even remember her name, and Lucy and Charlie.
Not Charlie.
No, Charlie shows up later.
Yeah, he shows up later. But he brought Lucy too, and Jack Frost wants to be Santa, so he's trying to sabotage everything.
Mm.
Like the workshop and everything, and Scott's trying to... You get the point. And his in-laws are not making it easy for him either. And truth be told, you know, it's getting to him. And the escape clause is you have to hold his the Santa snow globe and say, I wish I wasn't Santa, to take him back in time so he wouldn't be Santa.
Yeah. So Jack Frost manages to talk Santa into saying, I wish I was never Santa.
And tricks him.
And they went back to 1994. And Jack Frost ended up becoming Santa. And he fucked up everything.
And they go back to the present. But here's the thing. Well, 2006 present. But you get the point. But here's the thing. The rest of the movie, you know, it's just a rip-off of It's a Wonderful Life, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know, Jack's ruining it.
He turned the North Pole into
a resort.
An attraction, and
you could tell the elves were like, kill me.
Yeah, and he went over to talk to his ex-wife because he wanted to see Charlie, and she was like, what are you doing here? She's like, you have hardly seen Charlie all these years, and, you know, all this stuff, because, like, he turned out to be, like, a CEO or something of, like, a big toy company or something like that.
And in my opinion, this could have happened, but I don't know. I don't really see that shit could happen, but But I don't.
I mean, I can actually see it happening.
I know, but it was just, in my opinion, I just think that part was pointless. In my opinion, like it didn't last very long. I was like, okay, glad it didn't last very long. But yeah, they get Jack Snow Globe, and Scott recorded his voice because he knows Jack wasn't going to say it. So he recorded his voice when he did say it without Jack knowing. They go back in time. He holds down Jack till his younger self got the coat. They go back to present, and he goes to Carol and his in-laws, saying, hey, we all get pissed at each other and whatnot. But that's family, right?
Yeah.
So he takes him to the toy shop and telling him, not just saying, he just shows, and they figure out, it's like, this is Santa's workshop. And like the figures, Charlie, they're helping fix the toys, get them all ready, fix the machines. And they're seeing all this, and his in-laws are like, that means Scott is Santa Claus. And they're excited about that.
Yeah. And then, Carol gives birth to their first child, Buddy.
Yes. And that was his father-in-law's name, Buddy.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the movie, pretty much. But here's the thing. Before the movie ends, Jack throws Lucy's parents. She had to hug Jack to thaw his heart.
Yeah. And then, his power broke over her parents.
And she delivers the baby. He comes in with the kid. The baby smiles. It ends. Now, here's the thing, folks. That was the last movie in 2006 or 5 or so.
Yeah. And I personally think that would have been a perfect ending to have ended the series completely.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You're kind of wondering about the elves. Like, if you guys are a true fan of the movie, you're wondering about the elves in the real world, or fucking about what happened to the first Mrs. Claus. This is when the show comes in.
Yeah, because if you have never noticed in the first movie, there are scenes where you see an elf. I never noticed it until I saw the TikTok.
Yeah, until he told me, and I was like, but when I saw the beginning of the when they were playing Carol of the Bells, I see there kids around the toy store or whatever. I see a kid turn her head, and you see a
Yeah, so we're actually going to talk about that now that we're talking about the series.
And it's called The Santa Clauses.
Yes, and the first season aired last year, and then the second season just aired this year.
And also, in my opinion, they should have just done that as a movie. But here's the thing. The show episodes are 6, only total 6. They're only 20, 30 minutes long. You can binge that out in a day or so.
Yeah.
So, let's get to it. The first season is about, Santa Claus, his magic ain't running right, and I kind of agree. This is, back then when you were a kid, you didn't think Christmas was really, now Christmas becomes really commercial nowadays.
Yeah.
When you're a kid, you don't think that, but when you're an adult now, back then maybe it was a little commercial, but now it is a commercial.
I love Christmas. Christmas is my favorite season, my favorite holiday. But I do admit that it has gotten very commercial over the years.
Yes, but besides that, Scott's not having his magic. There's an elf, what's his name? Noel. And
Noel is kind of
his best friend.
Yeah, Noel says that he's his best friend, and he's actually married to the new head elf, Betty.
And she kind of when you look at it, her hairdo is done like an old fucking library.
Well, I mean, she's been around for hundreds of years, anyways.
Yeah, so. And yet they're married. I'm
I kind of get a little
that's a little creepy.
I get a little icky feeling from it just because I know that they're children.
I get children like to play house, but when you're doing that. On a show, I'm
I mean, at least they're not kissing each other.
Yeah.
The most that they did was hug.
Yeah, I'll take the hug. Then yeah, I'll do. Yeah.
I'll keep it PG.
They're keeping it G. I don't care. But in one way, if it's not less icky and not creepy and less Chris Hansen-y, It's all good.
Yeah. So, anyways, excuse me. They do manage to they find out that the reason why he's losing his powers is because people aren't believing anymore.
Yes, and here's the thing. He doesn't have just one kid, he has 2 kids, a son and a daughter.
Yeah, there's Cal, which is Buddy, and then Sandra.
And they very much want to be normal kids, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott realized they need to be in the real world. And Carol's kind of figured out what it does Mrs. Claus do. And she keeps asking Betty, but Betty keeps dodging the question.
Mm-hmm.
Because she doesn't want, am I just a model for a Christmas thing? You get the point.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to know what her purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, like I said, Scott's trying to figure out that they realize he needs a replacement.
Yeah, so he decides that he's going to start to retire. So he first asks Charlie to take his place.
But he didn't want to do it because he has kids and
a wife.
And he realized raising the kids at the North Pole ain't appropriate, especially when you're really young.
Mm-hmm.
When you're really that young, you can be a little bratty too.
Yeah. So
and it's funny. She really thought he was a mobster. Well, come on, how he was dressed, it was a little southern mobster.
Yeah. But she was also thinking like he was like working in Greenland or something like that.
As a fisherman captain.
A shrimper or something like that.
And when he said take over the family business, she's like, no, we're not doing it. I'm like, wow, you're not a supportive wife.
Yeah. So because she had they were living in Florida, it looked like, and he had like his own, or she had her own career going and everything like that. So that's the only time that we actually see Charlie in these two seasons, is just that one time. So then they start looking for people in the real world to. If you hear that squeaking, that's my dog.
And they got Peyton. I think they got Peyton Manning to try to ask himself to be Santa. I'm like, they should have done that. That would have been freaking hilarious.
Yeah. So, but then they chose this one guy named Simon.
Which the guy who plays Simon, he played on Harold and Kumar movies. I think he was Kumar. If you ever seen Harry and Kumar Go to White Castles, you get the actor's name. Yeah. But here's the thing. He was like this business tycoon, but couldn't. Like, he started out with a good business with video gaming and stuff, but he tries to be Jeffrey Bezos.
He tried to do like delivery and stuff like that.
It didn't work out. Then when he tries to become Santa Claus, he brings his daughter around because his wife died, and brings his daughter. And Scott thinks he's perfect, but it wasn't because the coat rejected him.
Yeah.
And pretty much.
Yeah, he started to, he turned it into Christmas every day.
In one way, he was turning it into a business.
And, it was ruining Christmas.
And that magic coat that Santa had went to the Witch of the Woods. What's her name? LaFonda.
We'll just call her the Witch.
Yeah. Well, she's a Christmas witch, which was in Italy.
Yeah.
But either ways, yes, you went. But one thing. The elf Gary kind of had a thing for her, though. I'm like,
Yeah. So
even she said we only had one day. I'm like, not better.
Yeah. So anyways, the coat goes to her. Scott and his family managed to make it back to the North Pole, and
they're adjusting, but he's not.
Yeah.
But he wants to be more with his family, but he realized he needs to. But here's the thing, Noel didn't like the new Santa. He keeps telling his wife, and she's like, she's all about rules and regulations.
Yeah.
But she's not putting his feelings into account, so he just runs away. And I'm like, okay, dude, not cool. Don't do that shit.
Yeah. So, anyways, Scott and his family goes and saves Christmas. But before that, there's the scene where Bernard shows up.
And he aged. No offense to the actor, you could tell the years was not kind of.
Yeah, you could definitely tell that he was a lot older. But he said that he did this thing called Cribble Crabble, which we will talk about more when we talk about the second season. Sorry, that's my phone. But basically, if you're not familiar with the Amish, the Amish culture, they have this thing called Rumspringer, and it's where they can leave the Amish lifestyle behind and go out and experience life as not Amish. So, like, they can go out and they can smoke, they can drink, they can have relations, they can do whatever they want. And then that's when they make the decision on whether they want to stay in the Amish culture or if they want to leave it all behind and become what they call English.
Yeah. So Bernard found a woman that he loved on his turnaround. He gave up his immortality. And pretty much the woman he loved was a 90-year-old woman.
Yeah.
I get he looks like he's 40 or 50. But hey, in my opinion, but he says, yeah, but isn't it kind of weird that you're married to a 93-year-old woman? And he says, well, I'm like 1,000 years old. We make it work. And I'm like,
yeah. So anyways, he takes him into this.
Scott calls it the Yule verse.
Yeah, and basically it's where he meets all of the Santas from the past.
Like, there's the Santa who did during the Depression, during the Dark Ages, during
the Santas when he was a child.
Even Krampus.
Yeah, he met Krampus. And then he met the Santa from
St. Nicholas.
No, the Santa from before he became Santa.
Yeah. He did. And this is what the Santa that Scott had as a kid decided to do this an idea. Because here's the thing, the elves in Santa, they're not really human per se. They're like what? Deities.
They're like basically legendary figures, creatures, that type of thing.
Yeah. And they're like spirits. So they decided, you know what, let's try doing it with a human. See what happens. And it worked. And he also wanted to have Carol. The reason why there's a Mrs. Claus, because the other Santas didn't have wives. So in one way, Carol is the first Mrs. Claus.
Yeah, because they wanted to. They said that any kid born in the North Pole would have powers.
So in one way, they wanted to see what happens, and it worked. Because Cal got powers, knowing about being Santa Claus.
Yeah, Cal was getting the Santa powers, and Sandra could talk to animals. And then one of her other powers does show up
but that's
in the second season. Second season. We'll talk about that here in a minute.
And, Santa comes by, fights, gets his coat back, and he's Santa again. And Cal goes in this training to be a Santa Claus.
Yeah. And that's pretty much where the first season ends.
And we got the second season. But here's the thing. We got two people you might know who are playing in the show. One, Mr. Gabriel Iglesias, a.k.a. Fluffy.
Yeah, he was there as this guy that had
a Santa Claus theme park.
Yeah, it's called Santaopolis or something like that.
Yeah, and because he likes Santa Claus.
He loves Santa.
And Christmas, so he made a theme park on it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sweet. They had a guy named Magnus Antis, which is a Santa Claus. They call him the Mad Santa, and he's played by the guy who played Cam on Modern Family.
Okay.
You didn't notice?
I didn't notice. No.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know either. But the voice sounds familiar, and I was like,
I honestly did not notice.
I didn't notice because of the beard and stuff, but his voice sounded even it was rough. I was like, it sounds familiar. I go look up. I'm like, it's Cam. Nice.
Okay, so I didn't know that. I just learned something new. Okay, so This one is actually a little bit more fresher in my mind because I did just finish, not last night, but the night before.
I finished it last Wednesday. So.
Yeah. I will admit that I'm really not sure what happened in the first 2 episodes because I was watching it at work and I was kind of tired. And I was zoning out most of the time while I was watching it because I do got to admit that the series is not my favorite. I just find it kind of boring. I also felt kind of rushed.
I agree. It should have been better as like maybe a movie or something.
Yeah.
But, we're not Disney executives, so we don't know how
Yeah.
it works.
So anyways, they start off with Cal learning how to become Santa, basically.
Yeah, and he's not doing well. The elves think, it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're really supportive when you want to be.
Yeah. But then,
his girlfriend keeps coming by a couple times.
Yeah.
And she's like one of those annoying ones.
Yeah, and then they end up breaking up at one point.
And
we're just gonna kind of briefly touch on what's going on. Sandra finds out that she's also a witch.
And La Fronda teaches her to be a witch.
Mm-hmm.
And Magnus Antis wants to get back to the North Pole to get his medallion.
And you find out that there were these things called gnomes.
That help with the...
And they hated the elves, and the elves hated them.
And they realized, and the gnomes were using Santa to be... Because I think he was like a Santa Claus during the Dark Ages or something.
Something like that, yeah.
But if you look at his hat, it looks like one of those... That helmet that Genghis Khan.
He said it was like 700 years before it took place.
Yeah,
so.
And they tried it. You get the point.
He ended up getting turned into a nutcracker with his right hand gnome, Olga.
And she's like she was always pissed off.
Yeah. So we should probably mention here that Betty is on Cribble Crabble.
And Noel is taken over to her.
Yeah. She made Noel the head elf. So anyways, they Mad Santa shows up at the North Pole, tries to take over. Some fights ensue between Olga and Betty because Betty does come back early from Cribble Crabble because it was an emergency. And then they do manage to talk Mad Santa into stepping down from being Santa.
Because he said he didn't mind it, but he knows when people were being didn't care, he just didn't like it anymore. He realized he didn't like being Santa.
Yeah.
But he liked being on stage. And and Chris, played by Gabriel Iglesias, says, what about you and me? We do things like we did all the time, but except we share the profits, we be on stage together. And here's the thing. When Gabriel Iglesias is playing he's pretty much a Santa freak. He's he gets to go to the North Pole, he's like, ah!
Yeah, he was so excited to go to the North Pole.
And they go to see the witch, and he knows her because he learned Italian to know about her fortunes.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, good. It's like, who's this geek in my house?
Yeah. So, anyways, so they basically end up saving Christmas again. The gnomes start working with the elves, and then Noel and Betty go on Cribble Crabble together.
And
we don't know if they're going to come back.
Even Scott was like, Curtis left, same as Bernard.
Yeah.
But he knows, if this is what they want, he's not going to stop them. Because he realized he was doing the same thing with Charlie, focusing on being the next Santa. And he realized, you know what? Be in the real world for a while. Be with your girlfriend,
Or wife. Go on that honeymoon that you guys never went on.
Yeah, right?
Pretty much.
And and Calvin, he brought a prom to him and brought his ex with him, and they got back together.
Yeah, him and his girlfriend got back together, Calvin and Riley.
But in my opinion,
I didn't like Riley's dress. She should have had a better dress. That's just my opinion.
My opinion, she was fine.
Well, yeah. Okay, so anyways, that's pretty much the end of the second season. Now, we're talking about Cribble Crabble, so remember when we were talking about the elves that we saw in the first movie? Those were elves on Cribble Crabble.
Yep.
So that's why we saw them. They were kind of keeping an eye on Cal too, or not Cal, Scott before he became Santa.
But also, when you get to the show, look.
Keep going.
When he's like talking to, let me make sure he didn't. Like you say, there's a guy named Gary. He acts like the old police guy. He's like, I don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's pretty much it. Like,
it's just that it ends right there. And like I said, if I was you, if you want to watch the show, binge it out for the rest of the holiday. Even go watch the movies on Disney Plus, show on Disney Plus. Like I said, the show could have been better, but could have been better as a movie.
Yeah.
But I give the first one 10 out of 10. Second one maybe a 9 out of 10. Third one 5 out of 10.
Yeah, and then the TV show is just kind of like 5 out of 10.
5. Yeah, I would go with 5.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, give them a watch. And remember, guys, we're at 16 subscribers. Please get us up to 100. We'll show our faces and everything and cosplay for y'all. And
yeah, like, subscribe. If there's anything you want us to talk about, put it down in the comments below. And next week's hint is it's smiling at me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually going to be going out before Christmas. So
hopefully take a look at it.
Yeah. So you guys have a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.